Dia Yves a Corja, agus tá fáilte. Hello and welcome to the Chroí podcast. It's Misha Elaine Nigul. I am Elaine Doyle, and it's with deep heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you to this sacred space. Yeah, Jesus, wow. I am really excited to finally be here. I first came up with the idea to share my story through podcast over a year ago. And it's taken me this long to birth it. So yeah, really grateful to finally be able to welcome you into this sacred space. So, Chroí. The direct translation of that is clay of my heart, or soil of my heart, earth of my heart. So it's about me sharing deeply from my heart space. So in this first episode, I really just want to simply share some of my intentions for starting this Chroí podcast. I want to share a little bit about my story and my life and what's really gotten me onto this heart-led life that I am currently walking now. And yeah, just want to tell you a little about what you can expect from this podcast. Even though I can't really answer that because it'll be my heart speaking. And as we know, if we're on a heart-led path, we don't really always know how it's going to go or what's going to come out. So yeah, I'll share my intentions and unattached to what my heart actually needs to say. Some of my intentions for starting this podcast. Well, obviously, as I said, Chroí means, the soil of my heart. It's really the truth, the juicy truth from my heart, and it's from living a heart-led life. And we are in the midst of a massive heart-led awakening, this new earth, which I will definitely speak about a lot, I would think, in this podcast. But yeah, it's really just to share my truth. We're in a time of so much change on planet Earth that I feel it's really important for people like me who can and have the freedom and availability to speak their truth, to speak it, because we're in uncharted waters and territories. There's no real reference point of how to really truly live a heart-led life. So I actually feel it would be unethical for me not to share my truth and my stories. And also I feel, I'm living in Ireland, I'm Irish. Storytelling is a huge part of our Indigenous culture and in our mythology. Our stories, our mythology really, and our history has been told through the telling of stories that have been passed on through many generations. The spoken word, which is very, very important to me. The sound and the resonance that we can really captivate and connect with one another through our spoken word and through sound. It really penetrates us, I feel, when we hear truth through the hearing of or through the telling of someone's story. For me, it's not just medicine for me to share my story, but I also feel like it's medicine for other people. And I know this through hearing other people's stories. When I hear other people's healing or life journey, it helps me realise that I'm not alone, and it inspires and motivates me. So yes, my intention is to just share from my heart with the intention of not just bringing medicine to myself, but also obviously to hopefully inspire and help you, the listener. Yeah. It was actually when I was in conversation with my friend Kleena last year. I'd sent her a really long voice note on WhatsApp about some massive reflections I was after getting from a lot of my pilgrimages to Scotland. And she was like, girl, you need to start a podcast. Like, there's gold in this stuff. And without sounding like egoic or anything, my life is so... how do I describe it? It's amazing, and it's sometimes like I'm living out a myth. It feels very ancient and amazing and hard and harrowing, and there's a lot of grief. There is a lot of really cool stories in there that just really need to be shared. And as I said that, I reminded myself, what is amazing to me or to one person isn't necessarily amazing to somebody else. So maybe you'll hear my stories and be like, what the hell is she at? And that's okay too. And that's why it's medicine for me to share my truth, irrelevant of how that is taken up. And also, what is my truth or one person's truth isn't somebody else's truth. All are truths. And that's something that's really important for me to state right now. These are just my reflections, my thoughts. It's not fact. The opinions and thoughts and what I share aren't fact. But what they are my truths. And they're my reflections. And they're my journeys. And they're my experiences. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in anything. But what I know I am good at is simply sharing my truth. Unapologetically, extremely raw. If anyone has been around the fire with me, you'll know that there's nothing that I'm afraid to really share or say or do in this lifetime. So yeah, just a disclaimer, I'm not here to state facts or to try and heal you or heal the world. I'm here to just live from the heart and to share the musings from that path of the heart. Oh, what can you expect from the Chroí podcast, which is the truth from my heart? Well, currently, and it feels like forever, that I have been on a very deep, healing, spiritual remembrance path, that of the heart and that of the soul. So I will be sharing everything that entails, really, everything that helps me on the healing, remembrance, awakening path. And I suppose some of those things will include working with the ancestors, ancestral trauma, ancestral healing, birthing this new earth. And this new earth really is a physical manifestation of the new states of consciousness that we as a species are arriving at due to now living from our hearts again. And if this doesn't make sense, don't worry. I will be explaining it, I have no doubt, again in other episodes. And yes, I'm really hoping to get on guests on this podcast as well that will be able to speak into these topics in greater detail. I have the most amazing community and brothers and sisters in my life that I also would love to come on for them to share their truth and their stories as well. So yeah, just coming back to what to expect, I suppose like some of my interests, my heart interests are working with the ancestors, as I said, working with the land, reclaiming the ancient Irish indigenous culture. one of my missions in this lifetime is to remember what it truly means to be Irish. And that's probably why I named my podcast in Irish Oscuelga, because it's a big part of my journey now. What else? There's so much. Reclaiming, our Indigenous culture, remembering the druids, the trees, the plants and the herbs. Foraging and working with the plants and making sacred medicines has been a big part of my healing journey. So I'll definitely be talking and speaking into that. Herbs, plants, trees, druids. Mary Magdalene, absolutely love. And I'm a little bit obsessed with Mary Magdalene, who I connected with in Scotland last year. I'll share more about that another time, but obsessed with like the divine feminine Christ consciousness and how we need the Mary and Yeshua and Christ consciousness energy now to really, truly live a heart-led life and to really birth this new earth. And actually how important both these threads are. The ancient Irish Indigenous culture, the druids and all the medicine keepers of this land, how we can marry that energy and remembrance with the divine feminine Christ consciousness to really, really birth this new earth. And it's really, that was the basis of Celtic Christianity, where it was the earth medicine marrying the medicine of the heavens, which is the divine feminine Christ consciousness. Because I really am passionate about both and unifying them and bringing them together. Gosh, I could go off on an awful tangent here now. But I'm passionate about both and how, I suppose the planet and humanity are in crisis right now because of our disconnection from the land and from our hearts. And we are the land. So when we disconnected from ourselves, we disconnected from the land and vice versa. And how the bridge to reconnecting is the ancient wisdom, and especially the Irish Indigenous wisdom of the Druids, which was a spirituality based on nature and the land. And that's really what I'm really, really passionate about, is coming home to ourselves through our connection with nature. And we are nature, so that's through our connection not just with our own hearts and our own selves, but the nature around us through the trees and the plants and the flowers and the rose and all these beautiful medicines around us. And then, as I said, marrying that with the divine feminine Christ consciousness. That too might make sense to you, but I will do a whole podcast, I would think, on that alone. What else am I passionate about? I'm passionate about music, dance, pilgrimages. That's a big part of my life, going to different sacred sites and sacred places across, at the moment, the Celtic Isles, Scotland, Ireland and the UK and Wales. I don't really feel the need to be too much further than that at the moment. So yes, I'll definitely be talking about the importance that pilgrimages have played on my healing path and journey. Another topic or subject that I am extremely passionate about is emotions, both feeling and expressing and tuning into all of the emotions that life gives us, which is easy to talk about, but not always easy to do and feel. So for those of you into astrology, I'm a rising Pisces, Cancer moon, Sun in Taurus, and a North Node in Pisces. So basically, that's a lot of water, a double water sign, with my purpose in this lifetime. My North Node also been in the watery spiritual sign of Pisces, which means that I am extremely Sensitive. Being my friend is interesting. And if you're my friend and you're listening to this, thank you. Because it's a roller coaster. And even as I say that, I'm reminding myself that we're actually all meant to be really sensitive. The world has desensitized us for their own gain. But we're actually meant to be sensitive. And I will speak loads about this. And I'll talk more later about it in my background. But yes, I was a social worker and therapist for years. So this is what I kind of did in the day job, was talk about emotions. And yeah, as I said, something I'm really passionate about, as I really feel when we allow ourselves to grieve and to feel all of our emotions, we actually step into health, wellness, sovereignty, and power. So intuitively, I feel that more and more of my story and my past, from when I wasn't maybe awake or on this heart-led path, will come out and will seep through probably maybe all of my episodes. Obviously in one episode here, it's going to be impossible to portray everything. But I do think it's important for me to share, because I know when I am listening to somebody, I want to know, firstly, how did they get to where they are now? I want to know their story, because it helps me understand why they're sharing what they're sharing. And I won't lie, it's probably why it's taken me a year to publish this. The reason is I have been slightly apprehensive or nervous about having to share my story. And it's funny because I said earlier on, there's nothing I'm afraid to do, but of course fear does come up. I always knew I'd get around to this, but yeah, of course fear does come in. And I'm not sure what that's about, but we'll see. Yeah, I suppose like it's easy to hide behind Instagram or Facebook, but putting the spoken word out there up on a platform means, yeah, my story and my spoken word is really out there. And yeah, I suppose it did feel vulnerable, because and not just in relation to my story, but Jesus, if anyone is on the spiritual path, I'm sure you will resonate with this. My views and opinions and truths are constantly changing, like constantly changing. So what was truth for me last year mightn't be the truth now. And sometimes I cringe, I'm like, oh God, Jesus, can't believe I was really into that, because that doesn't resonate. But yeah, I suppose it's giving myself permission that is our natural state, which is change. Change is our natural state. It's okay for me to put something out there and for me to change my mind on that. And I really hope yeah, you give me permission to say something, and maybe I'll change my mind about it. Yeah, and I think, actually there's distortion if I think that that's not okay. It's actually really important for me to constantly question myself, constantly reassess, am I on the highest timeline possible? Am I in full alignment? Is that really truth? Wow, that is really important for me, actually. And since the spring equinox, actually, I've been really realising that so much in my life has had to fall away. There was a lot of untruths that were really making themselves known. And I'm just being reminded now how like, especially as a woman who bleeds every month, there's a death and a rebirth cycle every single month where we, through our bleed, we shed that which no longer serves us, and we're rebirthed again into our most aligned self. So actually, as a woman, yeah, it's actually really, really healthy to change and to evolve and to change our minds on things. So I'm just noticing now how just from just speaking out loud to myself, I've actually made some good realizations there. So yeah, that is really good, and reminds me of why I probably became a therapist, because I just really loved how talk therapy, the Irish and their T's, or me and my T's even, I won't generalise us, 33 and a third. I remember when I worked in a primary school in Australia, and the kids just asked me to say that every day. But anyways, yeah, became a therapist because I just knew the power of saying things out loud, how it can actually bring so much, not actually, but it really brings so much deep healing, and really allows us to enter such higher states of consciousness. So yes, that is some of the topics to expect on this Chroí podcast. So yes, time to tell you a little bit more about me and my story. This is perhaps the bit I've maybe been avoiding, but I'm going to let my heart lead the way with this one. I suppose I feel maybe just a little bit overwhelmed because there's so much. Yeah. Whew. So I'm just inviting you to take a breath with me now. As I dive a little bit deeper into my heart, mo Chroí anish. So what part of my journey needs to be shared? So I am an Irish woman, obviously. Love everything Irish, being Irish, living in Ireland. It is my true love. Calling in more true loves though. Jesus. Yep. And I'm 35 next week. I feel like I'm about 25. Honestly, since I stepped onto the path of the heart, I honestly feel so much younger and happier, obviously, and healthy. Yeah, definitely selling the path of the heart. Anyways, I'm currently living on my ancestral lands in Kilkenny. The old Irish word was ossery, which means people of the deer. The deer is something I'd love to talk about as well, my spirit animal. Anyways, yes, I'm living on my ancestral land, aka also known as living with my parents at 35 years of age. The path of the heart will take you to many places, some comfortable, some uncomfortable, and being back on my ancestral land feels like ancestral boot camp. And this piece of land that I grew up on has been in my lineage since for at least 150 years. Because a lot of the records were burnt during the 1916 rising and stories not having been passed down, it's hard to know how long exactly they were here. But yeah, there's a lot of history here, a lot of healing and remembrance for me on this land. And it's funny because as I share my story, you'll see that I was actually taken away from this land a lot. And, you know, to really step onto the awakened path, or the path of the soul and the heart and healing, I actually had to come back to my roots, to my family, into my ancestral roots to really deeply heal. And I'm reminded by that quote, maybe you've heard it, like, you think you're spiritual until you go home and spend a week with your family. And I think that kind of shows that, like, if you do spend a lot of time with your family and you do feel sane around them or you don't feel really triggered, then you've done deep healing. Now, I'm not saying I've mastered all that and it's all love and light here. No, but I am absolutely devoted to that path of deep healing and love for all, especially those who trigger us the most, because we chose them. And everyone in our environment is here to help us grow and evolve. So yes, I'm back living on the land here for the last couple of years. I did spend 9 months in Wicklow, which was so healing and so needed to actually step out of the family to really rebirth myself, but then was just it was like a magnet back to the land for more healing within the ancestral line, really, because where I live in Kilkenny, a lot of my ancestors came from very close by. So this is the land of my dad's mother, no, my mother's dad, but also my dad's mother grew up a couple of kilometres down the road, and so did my mother's mother, so basically a lot of ancestral lines very close to me in Gorn, which is the place that I live. So it totally, it just dawned on me a couple of years ago. I was just looking around and I was like, okay, I can see that grandmother's house from here and the other from there. This is how I will do the ancestral healing, when I'm close by and I can feel their energies. So many things brought me home. Another reason was growing up in the countryside. It was absolutely essential for me as an adult to be able to move back to the countryside after leaving the matrix, which I'll get to. It's not always ideal when we're living with our family, and I love my family so dearly, but it's not always easy. But the benefits outweigh those negatives because I get to be on the land. We have enough land here to be able to grow vegetables and herbs and plants. And that is actually so essential to me right now on my path. We've got the hawthorn here and the elder and the rose. We've lots of herbs, the holy basil, mugwort, mint and rosemary and thyme. Grew oats last year, grow lots of different vegetables, and that has actually really been an essential part of my journey to reconnect with not just the land, but that feminine life force energy that actually births and creates all of life. So yeah, I'll get into that in more detail perhaps in another episode. But yeah, coming back here during this time of great awakening has actually been everything for me, and it's lovely to kind of honour that. And I literally came back here at the start of 2020. It's like my soul knew exactly what was coming. So I'd left the day job and I moved to Donegal, and I felt very isolated up there at the end of 2019. So I can't imagine being stuck there during 2020 with everything going on. I am so glad I was here. That's when I started to grow the vegetables, and we actually had a great time, me and my mum. It was actually, and my dad, it was actually a great. And I hope that doesn't trigger people, because I know it was a difficult time. And I'm not saying it wasn't difficult, but we definitely had made the most of it, So something coming through now to share about that is moving back home and living with my family at 34, well, I'm 34, but in my early 30s when I moved here first, I really had to let my ego take a seat and really, really, really trust my heart, because I suppose living, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in Ireland, success is about what you do, and if you own your own home, and if you have a husband, and if you have children. That's basically what people ask you here, and it's basically a measurement of success, and that is just a fact here in Ireland for a large majority of the population, let's say. And I know that's a big generalisation, but I do believe it to be true. I do. There is obviously a New Earth community that know it's not about those things. So yeah, it did feel brave and courageous to kind of not chase those things just because that's what was expected of me, but actually to follow my heart. Because, you know, there is aspects of those things my heart actually wants, you know. Like at 14 years of age, I was babysitting my neighbours' children there was 5 kids under the age of 6, and I was 14 and I loved it. Like, that desire to be a mother is so in my DNA. It's just, I know it's a part of my mission. So yes, I do want to get married and have children and own my own piece of land and all of that. But I suppose the pat of the heart shows you that it's not necessarily going to happen by a certain age, or it's not necessarily going to look like you think it will look like, or how your ego wants it to be. You actually deeply have to trust your heart. Because I've seen it with many of my friends from when I was working the day job and stuff. I remember like seeing girls get to a certain age, or even men, and nearly panicking and marrying from that place of like, well, if I don't do it now, or maybe I'll be alone forever. Or marrying the lad down the road just because that's what was expected of them. And like, Jesus, that was just never my path. I was never going to be able to do something if it wasn't fully aligned or it wasn't in my heart. So yeah, you know, I've really had to let my ego take a seat, because, you know, happiness and peace and success is truly a state of being. It's not what's in the external. And I remember my dad asking me a few months ago now, like, what is your dream, or what is your vision? And I was like, well, this is it. Like, I'm living from my heart. I'm learning how to love truly and deeply myself and the land. And, you know, this is the dream, because the dream is a state of consciousness. It's heaven on earth. It's the new earth. And all these things that I want are just, will just flow from that place of inner peace, you know. But I definitely, I see how it's definitely been very difficult and triggering for those around me, because, there is people, I suppose, in my life that still see success as being when you have X, Y, and Z. It's definitely been a courageous path to kind of give it all up, the external stuff, and say, no, I'm actually following my heart here. And when I say give it all up, what do I mean? Well, you know, I am now friends with people who mainly kind of have led a heart-led life all of their life. But I haven't. I've always been very sensitive to what my heart actually was able for, or wanted, or needed. But I deeply got sucked into what was expected for me, or expected of me. And even though it was all divine and massively, massively a part of my path in this lifetime, and I deeply trust everything today has unfolded for me to be so conscious and awake now. It wasn't necessarily the path of the heart, let's say. It was very much unconscious conditioning, trauma-led, and what society and people expected of me. I suppose I was a people pleaser, really. I did things by the book, went to college, did a degree, did my master's, got a job, studied more, worked more, until I nearly dropped dead. Yes, literally. And people ask me, what kind of got you on the path? And I'm like, well, my body failed me. My body just said no in 2018. It was just like, you can't do this anymore. And I feel like I'll get back to that story, that thread, maybe later on. But what's coming in really strong now is my life in 2011 and the events that happened at the end of that year. And it's interesting now as I reflect, because that happened just before 2012. And I said that 2012 was the end of the old cycle and the beginning of the new earth energies. So it's interesting that I definitely had a massive wake-up call then. And as I said, the events in 2018 when I burnt out in work, that was another massive, catalyst to my awakening. But this also was, as well, as I reflect. And there's many different things. I mean, I suppose everything in my life has been here to wake me up, or has been a part of my path. But this was massive. So I think it was October 2011. And I ended up in a Garda station, and my mother having to come collect me because my boyfriend at the time had assaulted me and robbed me and left me in a really distressed state in my workplace. And my workplace was a social work office. I was in my second year, my second year of my master's in social work, and I was on work experience in Kilkenny, which even made it harder that it was my hometown and everybody kind of knew me and they knew him. And yes, I had been in a very emotionally and sometimes physically abusive relationship, which it does pain me a little bit to talk about, because I'm like, oh my goddess, I actually can't believe that was me. Yeah, wow, what a journey I've been on. And yes, I had for a long time tried to break up with this person and broke up with him many times. But this time I was so sure. And I think the catalyst for it, I mean, obviously there's loads of reasons why you'd break up with someone who you're clearly not meant to be with, or it's not healthy. And I'm not saying that there wasn't light in that person, but the two of us together, it was in no way healthy, obviously. But yeah, the catalyst was, I remember I was working with women who had actually given their children up for adoption in the mother and baby homes, and I was counselling this birth mother, and it was like, I am never, ever going to be good at what I do if I'm in an abusive relationship. Like, my home life needs to be as healthy as possible for me to come into work and really be able to give as much light and presence to these vulnerable people as possible. And for anyone who knows me back then, like being a social worker, and a counsellor meant everything to me, as helping others still means so much to me, that was the catalyst for breaking up with my ex. And I did, and it really didn't go down well. He really was finding it hard to fathom that. And came to my workplace to pick up something that he'd left in my car. And broke into my workplace to get my phone, because he just presumed that there was someone else in my life, like another man, and assaulted me. And it was interesting because the only other person in the office was gone out on a home visit, so it was just really unusual that I was actually there by myself. But anyways, where I'm going with this was, I remember so vividly, I don't know if it was that night after my mum picked me up from the Garda station, or if it was the next day, and I picked up my journal. Now, I've always journaled, even when I was asleep, or when I was, when I mean like spiritually asleep, or when I was a child, like as a sensitive person, like I had to journal my feelings. But I remember journaling these words, which were, I don't know why I ended up in such a terrible, abusive relationship where my mother has had to pick me up from the Garda station because my boyfriend has assaulted me. But I'm going to do everything I can to figure out why. And I'm going to do everything that I can to heal myself. Oh, wow. And actually that's really healing for me to share, because I haven't shared that really to many people. And reflecting, I suppose that is literally the absolute crux and catalyst for the journey I'm on now. Like, I think when you're kicked to the absolute ends of the earth, which it felt like that day, or the absolute depths, what did they say? You have to hit rock bottom. Like that was rock bottom. Like it was a HSC office that got broken into. I was so embarrassed having to ring the college, and it was just so, my poor family, all the guards been like, can't believe you were ever with him, and it was just so, I felt like the guards were judging me. That's a whole other fucking story in itself. But I feel like for me, I had to actually hit rock bottom. And I suppose it's the same when I burnt out, like hitting rock bottom again. But and sometimes, and that's what happens when we're not living in alignment. You know, the universe will make it really fucking uncomfortable for us, so we wake up and listen. And that was me, that was it. I was like, okay, Elaine, you got to sort yourself out here. You know, you've come from a really good, loving family. What the hell was going on here? So I did. I wrote those words down. I set that intention. And here I am, 12 years later. And I'm just absolutely blown away by the person that I've become. I'm so proud of the healing journey that I've gone on, and really coming back to so much remembrance of what it is to be a woman, and to be in my power, and to be awake, and to be authentic, and to be strong and resilient. Wow, there's so much in all of that for me. So yes, perhaps I will dedicate, depending on what my heart needs to share, but I will dedicate an episode to talking into why I feel I ended up in that abusive relationship, and more reflections on that, because it obviously is a big part of my story and has really shaped the person I am today. But I'm conscious not to try and share everything in this first episode. And yeah, I know my story is just going to naturally weave into the episodes anyway. So yeah, to just come back to some earlier days, I suppose it's interesting, my throat is kind of getting a bit dry, and I think it's because it's clearing so much energy sharing my truth here, or maybe there's some, as I said, resistance about sharing my truth. But here I am. I'll cough if I need to, but I'm getting this out. So yeah, as I said, I grew up in the countryside, and I just absolutely loved that. Like, I grew up beside Gorn Park, which is now a golf club, but it wasn't when I was growing up. It was just a big, massive forest. And I spent so much of my childhood outdoors and very close to nature. My parents owned a garden centre. My dad's a landscaper. He's been growing his own veg for 20 years. My mother was also a gardener, green fingers. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons why I chose them, just getting to be around nature all of the time. And a few years ago, I actually found a project that I did when I was 8 years old in primary school, and it was on the oak tree. I've just always loved oak trees. Lots of them here opposite my house. And yeah, I mean, now seeing the connection between the oak tree and the druid meaning wisdom of the oak. So yeah, I suppose I was really lucky. Even though I kind of went off my path, well, I was always on my path, but I kind of went away from the kind of heart-led life when I was working in the Matrix. I always retained my relationship to nature. I always had a really solid relationship with nature that really has properly deepened in the last few years, but it was always there. You know, even when we were younger, our parents would bring us camping. We always went on trips around Ireland, and now I see them, they were pilgrimages too. You know, my parents are very, very, very connected to Ireland and the land here as well, you know. So yeah, I suppose that's probably what's held me through everything. Yeah, and has allowed me to come onto the path of the heart and the soul. I suppose it was nature that called me back, really. The natural world was like, you gotta come back to your natural state, which is living in your heart. And that reminds me, I remember when I was living in Perth in Western Australia. I just moved there a couple of months, and I was in therapy. I was in therapy because I had another relationship breakdown, which was very traumatic as well. That'll be a whole maybe episode in itself. But yeah, because I actually haven't been in a long-term relationship since then, and that was 2013. So, oh, what a journey it's been in a relationship with myself the past decade, which has been, wow, so beautiful. But anyways, I was really low at that time, and I remember the psychologist saying to me, she's like, you know, from hearing your story, Elaine, I think the reason you're really low and down is because there's no trees or nature around you. And I remember thinking, oh my God, yes, like that is it. And realising that, you know, my whole life I'd been around trees and greenery, and yeah, my soul was really missing that true nature. Because yeah, I mean, Perth, if anyone knows it, it's very very dry. It's 40 something degrees every day when we moved there, and I was living in a housing estate in a suburb, and it was kind of just like dry and red. And my soul was really, really needing that green therapy. And I remember the first time I visited Margaret River, which is down south of Perth, and it's green there, and I remember nearly melting. I was like, oh my God, I miss this so much. So yeah, nature has always been a big part of my life, and it's been so beautiful to really tap into the more spiritual, deeper, juicy connection with her, and to discover Druidry and the ancient wisdom of this land. It's been such a beautiful journey. So yeah, that's a little bit about growing up in the countryside. And as I mentioned there, I lived in Australia, so went to college in a convent, which was an all-girls school run by nuns. I think there was only one nun there now, in fairness, when I was there. But anyway, I then went to UCD in Dublin, studied social science. I took a year out, worked in a women's refuge, and went to University College Cork and did my master's in social work, which was 2 years. Absolutely loved it. Like, I absolutely loved that course, that master's. It was, I suppose it really changed my life in a way, because it got me out of that abusive relationship, you know. And I remember when I was 16, I remember this day so vividly as well, sitting on a stool in home economics class, and the teacher mentioned what sociology was. It was the study of why people do what they do, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So I've always been interested in people. I've always wanted to help people. I knew that was my mission. I just wish in college or in school someone had said, well, you can be a healer or a priestess. You don't necessarily have to go to college and be a social worker. But anyways, that was a part of my path. I fully trust that. But I know for my children, I'll be giving them a lot more newer options. So yeah, there was no jobs when I came out of my master's, and I went to Australia. I always wanted to go there. And yeah, my first job was, excuse me, working as a counsellor in a primary school. And yeah, I got to work with a lot of children from the Aboriginal culture, which was just so nourishing for me. And now I suppose my soul really gets why I was working with the Indigenous people of the land there. And I worked in the army in Australia, in Sydney, as a counsellor. I managed a mental health counselling service. And I know I'm kind of skipping through this a lot, but I'm getting conscious that, like, you're not going to want to listen to me all day long now. Let's be honest, people have stuff to do, like. And these are things I might come back to, but I just want you to get a picture of my life. Yes, I worked in the army, worked in mental health for years, either as a counsellor or a therapist or a social worker. But a lot of my career and work was in Australia as a counsellor or therapist, more so than kind of specific social work roles. And that's why I was there, because I knew the jobs were better than here. The career opportunities were just amazing. And I suppose for the whole there, I did love my work, but I found it extremely draining. I never really slept. Like, in my first job as a counsellor, I remember waking up at 4:00 every morning because I was so nervous and stressed about my work. And that's why I'm sleeping a lot now, because I'm literally didn't spend years and years, probably most of my life, in flight or fight mode and didn't sleep, which is a whole other topic in itself, flight or fight mode and all that. But I definitely didn't sleep in the day job. There was days where I would go in with no sleep because of the stress. Like, it seems like madness now, doesn't it? Yet this is people's reality. And I finally moved home in 2017. Obviously the land and the ancestors was calling me back for this healing and remembrance path that I'm on now. And I just remember hearing trad music in the pubs in Sydney and being like, I have to go back to the music and to the dancing and to my people and to the culture and the land. And I did. And then I got a job in Temple Street Children's Hospital. And yeah, it was in that job then that did I only last a year? Hold on now. No, I didn't leave the job till 2019, but I started it in 2017. And yeah, I would cry on the way into work, because living in Dublin, again, in a housing estate, not close to nature, crushed my heart and soul, crushed it. It literally, I was, in my late 20s crying on the way into work. And I remember at my 30th birthday in Cork just crying, being like, my life is fucking miserable. My life is miserable. Yet people in my life and my family were proud of me because I was a senior social worker in one of the busiest hospitals in Europe. But I was miserable. And my heart and my body were starting to give up, And yeah, in August, it was September 2018, I burnt out and I got sick and I just could not go back to work for months. Didn't really know what was wrong with me. They said it was glandular fever. I knew there was something obviously bigger at play. And I tried to go back. Yeah, and my heart and soul just wouldn't allow me. I went back part-time and I still wasn't getting any better. So, yeah, I handed in my notice then in August 2019, and it's funny because it was my throat that was really acting up. And the minute I handed in my notice, my throat literally healed. So that it all came back to speaking my truth, And yeah, that was the real catalyst to this massive spiritual awakening that I had, this deep heart-led, soul-led path that I stepped onto and into. And it was funny because it was the end of 29, so it was before everything came in the world. And I remember when everything came, I was like, oh, I'm so ready for this. I'm so prepared, So yes, I remember I moved to Donegal, left Dublin, moved to a sea view apartment in Donegal. And that was it. I was starting to really remember. I started going to a women's circle, and I met Danu, which is the mother of the Tuatha Danann, and I went to my first Samhain circle. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is where has this been all my life? This is my authentic self being met. This is it. This is what I'm here to do. I'm here to work with the wheel of the year. I'm here to be a pagan hippie. And that was it. And here I am. Here I am. Elaine Doyle's life summed up in, I don't know, was that 40 minutes maybe? And we're nearly at an hour here, so I'm conscious that I feel like maybe the spoken word has come to its capacity for one episode, but yeah. Yeah, there is lots more to share on my story and my journey in this lifetime, but yeah, I'm really glad that much has come forth, just to give you that kind of understanding of where I've come from and how I got onto this path of the heart. So just tuning into my heart now. Sin she says. That's it. That's it for today anyways. Lots more to come. I am hoping to have an episode out every week, depending on my cycle and my inner seasons. But yeah, I really want to show up for you and myself and share my truth and my musings and my experiences and my pilgrimages. So yeah, to honest get the meaning or a cardja. I'm really excited, friends, to share more with you. And yeah, please get in contact if there's certain things that you would like me to share or to talk about. And I will, because, there's so much things that I'm passionate and here to speak into. So yeah, thank you for joining me in this sacred space that is my heart. Thank you for receiving my words and my heart. Gra mór agus slán go fóill. Big love and bye for now. Dia Yves a cardja agus tá fáilte rash. Hello friends and welcome back to the Chroí podcast. It's Misha Elaine Nugul. I am Elaine Doyle, and it is with deep, heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you to this sacred space.